Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Donovan.
And I'm Jordan.
Join us as we go into the pages.
Podcast! Welcome to this week of Into the Pages. We come to you this week from the Uinta Mountains.
Oh, yes. We've been lucky enough that we live right next to them, so we can come camping anytime.
Yes.
And yet we've only gone once.
Yeah, we've been camping this weekend, and we thought, why not record the podcast
Yes.
in the mountains this week? Nice and peaceful.
And we're actually kind of lucky because, next weekend is Labor Day, so I think everyone's saving their camping for that time.
Yeah, we've been the only ones up here.
There have been a few people, but right now we are the only ones, and it's great. I always
Very
hated
nice.
camping growing up in like actual campgrounds
Yeah.
because usually it's full, and we had to, who are those strange people over there? I don't like them.
Seriously. I feel the same way.
Camping is one of those things that I feel like is a little different it's different for us than it is for like maybe people nowadays, because nowadays if you're got a lot of money you can buy like a nice big camper and you'll have like TV and AC and more importantly you'll have like all sorts of entertainment that requires batteries and stuff, where when we grew up, like, we either had to go play in the dirt and the trees and stuff, which we did a lot, but we had to bring books is what I'm getting at. And I think reading played a lot in our camping experience.
I think it was huge. I think reading, like, we would always drive pretty far, and so, like, the drive there, reading, drive back, reading, and also just during the really hot parts of the day,
Yes,
sitting in the shade reading.
definitely.
It's super nice.
It was nice. And even now, when we're adults and less energy, it's really nice to sit next to the fire. And with us, we've got our handy little Kindles. We can just read in the dark all night long. It's great.
If you don't have a Kindle or another type of e-reader, I highly recommend it.
Yes, I would definitely second that.
You know, even just at home, you know, like if you don't have to turn any lights on.
Yes.
And for me, it helps me get like way more immersed, like, because I can't see any of my surroundings, and I can just see the page I'm reading, and so it's very easy just to get totally sucked in, which I quite like.
Yes, and you know what I think, that I don't know if all readers are able to do this, but I think we've talked about this before, not on the show, but we've talked about that if we can get really immersed, then it doesn't even feel like we're reading anymore. It almost feels like we're just watching it, because we just
Yeah,
somehow our brain has that switch.
yeah, totally.
We go from reading words to it feels like we're just watching a show or something.
Yes, I love when I get to that point.
Yes.
'Cause then
And man,
just-
when you're out in nature like this, and it's like what you were saying, it's just dark and everything, it's just so
you
much
just got
easier.
the crickets and the crackling of the fire.
Yeah.
It's
There's
just
not
nice.
like ambulances and fire trucks and all the sorts of loud city noises going on around you. Well, we were lucky this weekend. And normally we'll have neighbors, but we didn't have neighbors, so it's just super easy.
Yeah, I made it way nice, which was perfect because we decided to save the reading for this week until we were up here in the mountains.
Yes, as we mentioned last
And
week.
these were really good chapters for that. I think there's a lot of character growth. There's a lot of, I think, bonding and understanding growing between Yumi and Painter. And we also finally get to find out why Painter is viewed the way he is by his co-workers.
Yes,
and foremen.
which I guess I don't want to get into much to it now because we'll get to it, but I wasn't sure what to think because it was kind of like we got both sides of the stories where like his friends were kind of like, oh, Painter like sucks, and he's like, oh, and like I guess he wasn't really like that, but
I think they both have pretty valid points. I think ultimately Painter's in the wrong, but we'll get to that.
yes.
I like the way that this group of chapters starts with a little bit of comedy. 'Cause if you remember last week, and ended with a little bit of hopelessness feeling from Painter, because the machine's up and running, and it's between himself and the machine, a spirit was summoned, and so there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of, can I even freaking do this?
Yeah.
And so it's nice to have a nice little break before we go back into deep, crazy. Not a lot of action, I would say. Not any action. Well, a little bit of action in these
We've
chapters.
kind of had
but
action. It's just not the typical kind of action we're used to. The action was that he stacked against a machine.
Yes, but I think that this was an important moment for. These were important chapters for Yumi, especially. I think we see a lot of growth from her.
Definitely.
In these chapters, but it starts off with she sees people kissing on a drama show on The Viewer.
Oh, yes.
She's like, she describes it as she watches the most shocking thing she's ever seen.
Yeah.
2 people kissing in front of her, in front of everyone, on The Viewer.
Yeah. And then I peeked at those chapters when we finished last week's episode, and I was kind of, I totally was thinking it was just like in public or something. But she was watching on a TV show, which I just thought was even more funny.
Yes, so it's these shows that are totally like soap operas that Painter's got Yumi 100% hooked on.
Yeah.
She said that. So it's been a week. This chapter starts with a week later, and Yumi says that in between each practice she watches 2 or 3 different dramas, and so she's
hook,
totally
line,
and
hooked.
sinker, totally into this. And Painter messes with her a little bit. I love this part where he messes with her because she's like, "How do they breathe?" And he's like, "They share breath. They push it back and forth into each other's lungs." And she's like, "Really?" And then he kind of chuckles, and she's like,
Yes. I love when it first comes in, and it's like they locking lips intimately right there. Then she gasps and pulls her blanket closer up to her chin. It's like she's scared. But then it's also, I love how can they show that?
I was like, "Is this legal?"
Yes. That was hilarious to me. Just like, is this allowed? I don't know why. Her innocence in this, it just made me laugh.
Yeah, seriously. And we're not getting into the details, but basically the show that she's watching kind of has a sad ending. The characters that are kissing aren't able to be together, and the whole entire series ends on that.
Yeah.
And Yumi is pissed. She's like, "Why would they even do that? Why would they even make a show that's sad?" And Painter's like, "Well, for some people it makes it more realistic." And she's like, "That's stupid. They should all be happy." And then they kind of have the conversation I think a lot of people have of like how realistic a show should be.
Yes, I think so too. Because there's people I've talked to who like hate sad endings. They don't like it, even though that's pretty realistic in my opinion. And I remember, I wonder, are any of you out there Marvel fans? Probably, maybe a little less now because they're not going so well. But when Infinity War came out and it ended with like half the universe dying, I met so many people who were like, "Oh, that was just a terrible ending. You should end happy." And it's like, well, first of all, this is not the end. We know there's gonna be a part 2, and it's obviously gonna get better.
I think that was a perfect cliffhanger for that type of situation.
I actually really like when things don't end right. That's actually one reason I really liked Mistborn by good old Sanderson. It's just, I like how he talked about like, man, these evil guys just have a hard time, and they can't get like some 11-year-old kid comes along and just destroys everything somehow, even though they've been working for years to put something together.
Yeah, I like the ending. I don't know if I necessarily mind if it's sad or happy or bad, as long as it flows with the story.
Yeah, as long as it's good. If you're doing it just to do it, or you're trying to like,
if like the last few chapters, you're all of a sudden like, oh, all of a sudden this problem's fixed, this is fixed, this is fixed, this is fixed, everything's perfect and hunky dory, and you're like, okay, the whole story. You can't wrap up a story like that.
Yeah, I agree.
It has to flow, and like especially with Mistborn, the way it ends perfectly flows and lives and ends with a, yes, everything's good, but we that's just the next challenge now, and you can't. It's not just all perfect. Which
yes, I like that too, and I like overall how the first era of Mistborn ended. I really enjoyed that ending because it was all hunky dory, but it also wasn't. I don't know.
Yeah, like they won, but there was definitely a cost.
Yes, and like the person you thought was going to be like the hero ended up not being the hero, sort of.
Yes.
In a way.
Yeah, try not to give any spoilers.
The person who became the hero to lead people out of the ending of that was not the person we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, for sure.
If y'all haven't read Mistborn, Era 1 or Era 2, I would highly recommend it. I am sure you would do as well.
They are very good.
Anyway, back to Yumi and the Painter.
Yeah, so after they kind of have a long discussion about I guess how realistic a show should be. And then Painter kind of is like, okay, let's get back to training. And Yumi's like, no.
Yeah.
Like, I've mastered bamboo. We're going out. And then she's able to convince Painter. and they decide to go nightmare hunting.
Yes, but there's a little bit of a catch. Painter goes out with like a I don't know what you want to call it, a condition. That's what it is. Like saying like you're not gonna fight the painter. You're gonna use this little bell warning thing that painters have.
Apparently new painters have this like alarm they can push that rings really loudly and brings other painters. And I was thinking about that, and I think as a citizen that would be really annoying to all of a sudden like hear this alarm outside, and then you wake up and there's a nightmare right there, and there's a painter that can't deal with it, and you're like,
yeah, that'd be super distressing for sure.
Painter, he's really reluctant though, even though Yumi convinces him. He kind of offhand mentions that there's a couple times where he's like, "Oh, let's go back." Like, "Oh, let's go back."
I was actually really rooting for them to run into a nightmare, and I was hoping Yumi would fight it. Just because I wanted her to see just how not easy things are, how difficult painter's life actually can be, and like, oh great, you can paint bamboo, and yeah, you've proven that maybe, but let's see you do that when a nightmare is trying to eat your face.
Yeah, and that's the point he actually brings up. He's like, it needs to be instinctual, like you have
Yes.
to be able to not be able to think, and then just do it.
Yes.
And he actually brings up like a really good point, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but he mentions the disconnect between what he was taught in school and what the reality of the day-to-day job is. Like in school, they're teaching like you have to capture the essence of the nightmare, and you have to be creative and do this wonderful, awesome things. And then when he gets there, he's like, it's really hard to be that creative on demand every day, in and out for hours and hours, and just be creative. And so that's like, so he mentions like, that's why I do bamboo. It works. It gets my job done. And at the end of the day, this is a job. Like,
Yeah.
it's a creative job because you have to paint them, but ultimately it's really not.
We discover / Yumi discovers painter's blank mural.
Oh yes, because when they're on part of the patrol is to go outside the city limits, and then she sees all of the murals that the painters can do, and sees his blank space.
Did they even see his, or was like they saw all the other ones? She's like, "Where's yours?" He's like, "I don't have."
I think it's the second. Yeah, I think they saw the other ones, and she's like, "Where's yours?" And he's kind of like,
Yeah.
Like he doesn't actually say anything.
And I think he dodges the question and doesn't really answer why he doesn't have one.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And it was I was thinking like painter's foreman was kind of like behind something, because they start to discover as they're on their patrol, they start to discover that like things have gone kind of unpatrolled, unwatched in his area.
Yeah, this whole time Painter's been assuming that someone's been covering his shift, but the foreman assumes that his beat that he walks is really easy, and he thinks that he's making up all the paintings. That's why it's always bamboo. So the foreman's assuming that Painter never catches any nightmares, even though every bamboo painting he's submitted is
Like actually was
actually
something.
a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they actually find the nightmare. So they find the traces, and Painter kind of teaches Yumi what to look for.
Yeah, she starts to learn how to track.
And then they climb up to I pictured it as a second story, but I don't know if it really says how far it was. She had to climb up a fire escape, and there was a really creepy nightmare there, feasting on an old woman.
Which was surprising to me right there, since usually it's children, but apparently this old woman was good enough for this nightmare to go after. But
Yes.
I guess maybe I was kind of thinking like they would strictly go after children, but I guess maybe that was just my own assumption.
Yeah, I guess just whoever's having the most vivid dream of where they're at, I guess.
Yeah.
Painter goes ahead using his invisibility as a spirit to their advantage, and tries to convince Yumi to leave. He says, "This isn't the nightmare we're looking for. Let's just go." But Yumi's like, "No, like we have to help. We have to do this." And so she walks in, and I guess as we could imagine and predict, she freezes.
Yes, and well, at first, like Painter, I think was trying to get her to not only just leave, but also to maybe just just ring the bell for help. I can't remember if that was actually what happened, but yes, Yumi tries to is kind of getting stubborn. I was like, well, I wanna fight this now. We can't just leave it to feast on this woman. Let's take it out. Yeah, and yes, she quite panics. She doesn't have it in her yet. She doesn't have the nerves to face it yet. But anyway. So yeah, Yumi's Scream accomplished the 2 things, maybe 3 if you count waking up the old lady. She woke up the old lady and got the attention of another patrolling painter squad, which happened to be...
Which, of course, is
was
Akane
Akane
and
Tojin.
So while Yumi's like panicking and like freaking out and she's like frozen, Painter's like trying to coach her through certain things. He's like, meditate, calm down.
Yeah.
She's like, I can't.
We needed a good... Calm down.
And then Painter kind of stopped because during all this, the nightmare kind of stops and like looks up. And initially it's kind of assumed like, oh my gosh, she's looking at Yumi, but the nightmare's looking right at Painter. And goes up to Painter, and Painter's like, can you see me? Can you hear me? And then it focuses on him and starts to feed off of him. And it's pretty crazy how I imagine what it looks like is like, you know, in Harry Potter movies when the Dementors are sucking their soul.
Yes.
They kind of like fade and start going like sucking. I kind of pictured that.
Yeah, totally.
Except it was like the Heian, like as his essence left him, it turned into like Heian line type colors. And it kind of like shocks him and freezes him, and he can't move or can't do anything.
Yes, and then that's when Akane screamed.
And that's when Yumi, her everything kind of finally catches up. She finally starts to go, and she just screams.
Yes, she can't focus. She doesn't have those nerves yet.
Which is fortunate that it works. Coyd kind of jumps in at this point and says, loud noises can sometimes scare away, or a lot of times scare away a nightmare, and luckily, it's kind of like a last defense for a painter to scream or make a loud noise if they are not able to paint a nightmare.
Yeah, that's probably only something that new painters would do if they just they can't handle it.
Yes.
They don't know what to do.
Yeah. So luckily it does. It scares the nightmare. The nightmare runs away, and I just imagine the old lady like, if I was in my room and I hear a scream that wakes me up and there's like someone staring at me on my window, I'd be like, I'll be freaking out. I'll be like, what the frick?
Yeah.
What you yelling for? But the old lady's just like, Painter? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, she was way more calm than I think we would be. Especially like what kind of surprises me is the nightmare was feeding on her because she was having a nightmare. Isn't that the case?
I think it's just any dream.
Is it any dream? Okay, so maybe not.
Maybe it is nightmare.
I was thinking that she would have a nightmare and be a lot more scared, but maybe she's not having a nightmare. She's fine.
Yeah. And Painter instructs her to just be like, oh, I'm just checking on you.
Yeah,
routine, stare at people and scream.
I was just screaming because I was nothing.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Even though if the old lady is observant, she would see the canvas, she would see the ink, and would notice that Yumi's like freaking out.
That she is not chill.
But
and I would imagine there's maybe footprints left by the nightmare. That's how they tracked it, right? So wouldn't there be someone in her room that maybe they followed?
It doesn't mention any of that. But another result of the scream is that there is a patrol of painters nearby that come, and it happens to be Akane and Tojin.
and they're upset as all can. At least they are upset. At least Akane is pretty upset to find Yumi out there patrolling and trying to take on nightmares, because she believes this is all just some big scam that Painter is running now, trying to get everybody to like him again or think he's some sort of hero and all that jazz.
Yes, and something finally snaps. Akane is just like, okay, this is enough. Yumi, you need to know the truth about your brother. We need to tell you what's going on. It's kind of like, ooh, what's the truth? Because they're very upset. They're decided to do a whole full-on intervention.
Yes,
and
so
so
they got all the gang back together just for this.
Yeah, so Akane goes and takes Yumi to the U-Noodles shop, and Tojin goes and gets Misaka and Izzy, and they all find someone to cover their shifts. Like, it's a big deal. And Painter's reaction to this was a little different than I was expecting.
Yeah.
I thought he would be kind of panicking, like, oh, Yumi, don't just go back to the apartment. Don't listen to them. But instead, he's just resigned. He's like, oh, well, I guess it's better this way that she finds out what I did. And he's kind of set that he's like, oh, well, it was good to be friends with Yumi while it lasted, but I'm just destined to be alone. And so you're kind of like, what the heck is this secret? Like, what is going on?
And the way that I'm not surprised he would think this about Yumi, like, oh well, I guess we won't be friends anymore, and blah blah blah, because of how much she reacted to him not being an actual warrior or hero. Like she became Li Yun when she found that out, and it's a good thing that's actually done some growing in this time.
Yes, and I think Painter is starting to really care about Yumi, I guess you could say.
Yes, I was going to mention that we, in the end of the last chapter, we kind of see him expressing some of the same feelings that Yumi has been expressing just in her head or whatever when they're in her world.
Yes, and while they're at the noodle shop, Design even comes up and starts talking to Painter, and she's trying to figure out human interactions, and she's like, what do you like about Yumi? And he's like, don't you feel the heat she radiates, and she's just so wonderful. And he
gives a much better answer than when Yumi asked why he likes Akane.
Yes, because the only reason he gave for why she likes Akane is that she's hot and he likes the way she dresses. Like, it's essentially what it boiled down to.
She was nice, and that was it.
Yeah. But Painter doesn't want to hang around. He doesn't want to listen to this.
Which I'm not surprised. I mean, when any of us have like a giant mistake, we don't want to sit there and face it. It's embarrassing, it's hard, and it's just humiliating and everything. So
I just got very distracted.
What's over there?
A little caterpillar.
Oh. Squish it. Look, it's good too.
So Painter leaves, and that kind of wraps up. 26 is a little short. It's like it's mainly them just all getting to the noodle shop, starting this intervention. We get a little more insights. I'm kind of summarizing now. We've already talked about a lot of this, but we find out that Painter's just, I guess he is freaking out in a way. He's just kind of assuming that when Yumi hears what she's about to hear, she's going to just completely write him off, which I can understand why he feels that way, because that's what these four did. And the way Yumi reacts to any type of a lie is to just be like,
yeah, she just goes totally crazy and acts as if just murdered her firstborn child or something.
Yes. But enough teasing. Chapter 27.
Yes.
We find out what happened and what made everyone view Painter the way they did. And honestly, when you first hear the story, like, I'm on their side. I'm like, yeah, Painter is a world-class. I don't want anything to do with this guy. Like, get away from me. And basically, what happened? So we know about the Dream Watch, and we know how they're elites and they're the best painters that there is. And we learned that Nikaro Painter is actually like very talented.
Yes.
And he's and I think, I don't remember if it was Akane or Izzy who says that his talent is like better than any she's ever seen.
I think that was Akane, yeah.
And they say that Painter, like they joined painting school just like on a whim. They're like, oh yeah, sure, I'll become a painter. But Nikaro, our painter, has like his whole life since he was a kid, he's wanted to be a member of the Dream Watch, and he's practiced and he's learned and he's
and wasn't it like some of the things he did when he was like some little 5-year-old, they were starting to do when they were like in this college setting.
Yeah.
And so he was insanely skilled.
Yeah, and
kind of said that he's the best painter
she's ever seen.
seen.
And so when they saw that, they even said like, "Oh yeah, you're totally gonna be the Dream Watch." Like, that's like foregone. Like, because I think we don't really know all the requirements other than they're really, really good painters. But it seems like there's more than that, because apparently each member of the Dream Watch has like a support team that they call champions, and they all had these. They had the like paint Nikaro and Tojin and Akane and Masaka and Izzy. They all had this big plan that when Painter became on the Dream Watch, they would all join as his champions.
Yes, and apparently that's more than just like a big deal. But that's like being told you're going to be like the second for the NBA or something. I mean, yeah,
it's a really prestigious job. There's a lot of money in it.
They're going to get a lot more money, and
they were all excited about it. They were like,
they'd get better status too. I think it wouldn't just be like as they've mentioned in the beginning of the book, like painters don't have a really big status. They're like the bottom of the barrel type of
Yeah,
thing.
essentially.
But
they
they're
make minimum wage.
they're
pretty much.
like the sewer workers. Like that is such an essential job. But all of us probably like, oh, sick, you're just working the sewer, or you know what? I don't know if that's exactly what they think of painters, but they don't have high super opinions of painters. Is all I'm trying to reiterate.
Yeah. So that's like their first year of school. That's like they're planning for it, and then there's a test to get into the Dream Watch, and Painter tells them that he passed, and that he
tells me he got in.
he got in, and so they're super stoked. Like they tell their family that they're going to be champions. They tell like this whole thing, and this goes on for a year.
Yeah, and apparently throughout this year, he's just saying, "Oh yeah, when I was gone, I was training with the Dream Watch.
Yeah,
I
so
was
he
with the
would
Dream
leave
Watch."
classes early to go train with the Dream Watch. Like he sold them on this, and like he made it seem so convincing. But it comes out after a year,
Yes, for a whole year he dragged us on,
and it turns out he never got into Dream Watch.
Yes.
He,
which is like, he had the same attitude when he went back to his friends as he did when he first met Yumi. Like he wanted to be this like hero. He wanted to be looked up to and thought good of and all that. And he just couldn't bring himself to not only lower himself, I guess, in other people's eyes, but he couldn't bring himself to admit the truth to everyone that like, sorry, I can't become a Dream Watch painter, and I can't bring you with me anymore.
And at this point, like you just have their side, which is like 100%. Yeah, Painter is a total jerk. They were right to cut him off. They're right to not like him, and to an extent, they still are that. But after hearing this, Yumi rushes back to Painter's apartment and looks at the folder that he freaked out for
his
to
little
touch,
portfolio then.
and finds masterpieces. Like they're so good that they're like coming alive, and even though they're in like only in black with black ink, like they're just so vivid and so like just well done.
And this is where we get our first art in the book, is we see Yumi looking at all these paintings.
Yes, the paintings are a little unclear, so we can't tell exactly how good they are.
Yes, the painting, the picture of Yumi's done really well.
Yes. Yes. And then that's when Painter shows up and gives his side of the story.
His side is quite sad, I think.
It is really sad. Like he's talking. This is I jumped ahead a little bit, but he's talking. This is when a little bit he talks about, he tried his whole life to do this. Like he was so geared up for it, and he made it seem like come across like he's never really had friends before. So I don't know if he was just like a weird kid that was just drawing in the corner, but growing up, he made it seem like he never really had friends.
Yeah, it sounded like a part of the reason why it was so hard for him to be truthful is that like Akane and Tojin, Izzy, and that other girl, I forgot her name. They all, Misaka. They were all like his first friends, and he's like college age right now, or maybe not, because didn't they say in the beginning of this book he's like 18 or was it 20?
Kind of like around there.
I think it was 18.
Which I think in their world that's like right at the beginning of adulthood, more than it is in ours.
Yeah, so it's that's where the story kind of gets sad. Is just like he was trying to keep all these friends that he had finally made, but
yes. And so he said how it happens is after the test he went, and it was Akane's birthday, and so he didn't want to ruin her birthday with bad news, and so he's like, I'll tell him the next day, and then that just kept snowballing and snowballing.
Yeah, and there was
and then
there
he's
was
like,
always something that was convincing him
and then
to
he's
not
like,
tell the truth yet.
It was more his personality of being unable to be like, guys, I didn't get in. Because he's like, I saw how excited they were. I saw how much big a deal this was, and I just couldn't bring myself to wreck it.
Yeah.
And then and Yumi's like, so you dragged it on for a year? And he's like, I know. I shouldn't have done that, and I just feel terrible. And he like breaks down and starts crying.
Yes.
And then this is where I think we see a lot of growth from Yumi, because Yumi, instead of being like, you son of a liar, you're going to the hell, she comforts him, and she's kind of like, she's there for him. She doesn't touch him because she doesn't want to feel that heat and passion, but
she did get the tear.
Yes, she's like she's like
that's it.
But she doesn't quite say like what you did was okay. She's kind of more like, I think she comforts and supports him in a good way. And she's like, let's get away. Let's not worry about training. Let's not worry about all our problems just for a night. Let's go do something. And Painter's kind of down and out about himself. He's like, oh no, like I'm so terrible, like there's no way we can do anything.
Yeah.
He's like, no, let's go out.
There's another big part that I thought played into Painter's like lying. And it was just that, Akane says he's the single most talented painter he's ever met. He's not like everyone else. He dedicated his life to this. This wasn't just a whim. And then he goes to try out he actually did try out for the Dreamwatch, but he wasn't good enough for him.
Yeah, he said that Painter says that the Dreamwatch said his perspective was off.
There was a few pointers they gave him, but one of them was like he didn't understand perspective, something like that. So it's kind of hard to tell at this point too, like how good of a painter he actually is, because when you compare him to not good painters like maybe Akane and the rest of that gang, like maybe he's really good compared to them, but he's just not as good as the Dreamwatch painters.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but like for me, whenever I see a friend that can draw good, I'm like, holy crap, dude, you're a freaking master.
Exactly.
But then you take that to like an art museum, and they're like, you're nothing compared to like Van Gogh.
Yeah, so like what I kind of think of it as is you can look at like comic books and maybe anime, and like those are really good drawings. And like you and I would have to practice the next 10 years every single day to draw that good. But then you see the people who can draw a picture and it looks like a photograph. You're just like, oh my gosh, you drew that? That looks like a photograph. And like I kind of pictured it like that. Like
yes, maybe that's what it is.
That's just how good the Dreamwatch painters are.
It could also be like it seems like painters are expected to draw a certain way, and maybe his style isn't that way, and so it's rejected.
It could totally be that too. I wouldn't be surprised with that. And I'm kind of wondering we don't know how long ago it was that he tried out. Maybe it was
a year.
Was it just a year?
I guess 2 years.
2 years.
So
Okay.
so it was. I guess it made it seem like this is a 2-year training to become a painter. Like the first year, and then you try out, and then there's another year, which is when he deceived them, and now they've all been on the job for a year. So I think it's been about 2 years since the initial.
So I was trying to get at is maybe he's gotten a little bit better. Maybe he's good enough now to join.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like other tryouts.
But I mean, it's also what I don't know for sure yet is how he feels. Like, okay, he wasn't good enough then, but it like destroyed him. He said that's what he said. Like he got rejected. It crushed me, Yumi. It destroyed me.
Yeah,
so
because his whole life to build up for that, and then just
like that kind of makes me think like he probably didn't have the motivation or the will to like practice. Okay, I'm not good at this, and this. I need to practice those. And I don't think he was in a good enough frame of mind. I think he was hurting a lot, especially. I mean, I guess he had that year that he could have been practicing to trying to get the Dreamwatch. So he was lying to everyone.
Yeah, I bet knowing the group of friends now how they've treated Yumi, I bet if he'd been honest right from the start, like I didn't get in, guys, like they would have all rallied around him.
I think they would have. Because especially
he maybe wouldn't have been part of the Dreamwatch, but he would have been like happy as a painter, you know.
Yeah, I think so too. He would have been in a lot better place, but unfortunately, he had one of those really hard lessons to learn that when you lie something like this, something as big as this, it's gonna.
Yeah, and like the way that the other four feel
face.
is like he toyed with their lives and their emotions and for a whole year, and like they planned their whole lives around it. Like I can imagine being promised like, oh yeah, you're gonna make this much money a year, and we're gonna do this and this and this, and like the very last second right before I graduate, be like, oh, actually, I lied about everything.
Yeah, I've been in situations like that on a smaller scale though, where like someone promised me something, and I thought it was like, oh, like it's gonna be better. Things are gonna be better. You're gonna be able to live life a little easier, and blah blah blah. But then like it doesn't follow through. But for me, it's been like a little different. Like Painter did a pretty big lie.
And he like made a lot of effort to sell it.
And like in my experience, I've had like smaller ones done by the same person over and over, and then finally it's like, oh, okay, so you're just full of crap. I don't know what your deal is, but like every single time you say you're going to do this or that for me, it doesn't pan out, or like you just have some excuse and crap like that. But I don't know. It's hard to tell if I would still be as upset as these guys were with Painter if I was in this situation of like, well, you should have just lied to us. Moving on. Or if I would have been the same, like, get out of our lives, you suck.
I probably would have reacted the same way they did, honestly. Especially when they found out what he was doing. Like, he lied and said he was going to training with the Dreamwatch, but he would just go to the library and just, like, stare at the wall. And they wouldn't even do anything.
Which is weird to me. Like, was that literally what he did? Did he not just go to just do something, or is he just...
Who knows?
And
that's what one time, but
that's what they think he's doing now. He thinks that the Akane and the gang thinks that Painter has convinced Yumi to go on patrols, and while he's hunting the stable nightmare, and really he's just hanging out at some cafe somewhere staring at the wall, which is, as we know, is not the truth. He's been stacking rocks.
That's how much I guess maybe it's a similar category. Stare at a wall or stack rocks.
And we did get a second piece of art in this, just really quick, just of Yumi wiping away Painter tears. It was an awe moment, I guess. Yes, there you go.
We kind of jump all over the place, but basically the chapter ends, and Yumi and Painter decide to go to a carnival.
Yes, so that's where it kind of picks up to where you were talking about, like, Yumi's just like, let's just get out, let's forget our responsibilities for one night, and something, I don't remember exactly what she says, but I really like this because this is where it really showed Yumi's growth that you were talking about, where, like, normally, as she even talks to herself in her head, like, normally she would have, like, really reprimanded him, like, you should have done that.
And she even says it, she's like, this is like a really big lie, and she's like, but not bigger than the lie I just found out from Liyun.
Yes. So, and this is actually, that's the part where I was...
That's Yumi's life, like 18 years. Yeah. 17 years, however old she is.
It is her entire life, so it's been a while. I was feeling bad for Yumi at this point, because she finds out that, like, her entire life was a lie, and a few weeks ago or a couple months ago in their time, she found out, Painter isn't really some, like, hero, awesome person that the spirits summoned to help her. Like, he's just some regular Joe Blow. And now she's learned, it's not, she wasn't really lied to in this instance, but she kind of was like, oh, you kind of did something that actually sucks for these guys, and you're actually a way better painter than you led to believe, type of thing. So I'm relieved and impressed that she didn't go off and like, well, like, I don't want to ever see you again.
Yes. I think it was a very important moment for both of them. For a painter to be able to have this out in the open and not be completely rejected again, but instead have someone by his side. So
yes, I agree. This has raised a thought in my head, a couple of things, where is this is more just a funny thought, but, like, I felt lied to as well. Because, like, this whole time we were thought Painter was just, like, an okay painter. He was good enough to be, like, the lowliest painter, and really he's this, like, master artist.
His master artist that draws bamboo, and you're like, what the
I don't feel lied to by Painter. I feel lied to by Sanderson.
I still think he's going to end up painting Yumi as his mural.
Oh, I didn't think about that. That'd be cool. Because she's played such a huge part in his life now. But and there was one more thing that I think that we've kind of tried to touch on, but I'm more convinced of this now, is I am totally convinced that Painter can summon spirits by painting. He just needs to not paint bamboo. He needs to, like, let the art take him again. He needs to get encapsulated in it, totally feel the flow and get the vibe
like in the
and
very
everything.
beginning of the story when he found that stable nightmare, with that mode he was getting into when he was painting the...
Yes, if he can get that in Yumi's world, then I bet you he'll summon a ton of spirits. I don't know how many... I don't think I have a prediction of how many he'd summon, but I think it'll be enough that it'd be like, whoa, wow.
Yes, I'm still holding
It's
out hope
it's
for
gonna be
that.
one of those shocking moments, but, like, I'm super convinced of it. Like, I
Me
don't
too.
see how we could go on from here and have Painter only summon through stacking rocks.
Yes.
Especially with how things are going there now, like those machines are taking over, and I don't know. It kind of doesn't seem like it should be a bad thing that these machines are coming around, in my opinion.
I'm convinced that the reason why the spirit came was because the machine and Painter brought, like, the human emotion and passion, and the machine brought the ability, if you will.
Like the Order from Chaos part.
Like,
Yeah,
I
so
think if
maybe-
Painter had started stacking and really tried, I don't think a spirit would have come. And I wish that he had just watched instead of tried to compete. And then we would. I think a spirit would. I don't think a spirit would have come.
Yeah, that's interesting. But have we heard? Has the machine actually summoned a spirit? I can't remember if the guy was like, "Oh, we summoned one once a while ago."
I remember they talked about they needed to capture a spirit to turn on the thing that was supposed
Yeah, I
to
remember
summon
that.
spirits.
Which is like, how do you do that? And
It's almost like I need to turn on the power, but before I can turn on the power, I need to get power to the button to turn on the power.
that it'll be interesting to see. So I wonder if the whole thing is going to be like the machine actually doesn't work because somehow you need to summon a spirit. So we don't even know where they got the spirit for the other times they turn the machine on. Like, did they just take it from one of the ones that Yoki Haiju summoned?
I don't know. Or maybe it'll be like the Yoki Hydra that aren't Yumi, like, 2 or 3, 5 a day. Whereas Yumi, when she really immersed herself and like forgot herself, she summoned like 30.
Yeah.
So
I wonder. Yeah. So that one's still up in the air. Like, what's gonna happen in Yumi's world is still kind of like, I don't know what's gonna happen. Except for the fact that I'm so convinced that Painter's gonna summon a spirit with haunting.
yes. I hope that happens.
Yes. Next week is going to be an extra interesting set of chapters, I think. Simply just because I think we'll get a little bit more world building. I think because we'll be able to see what a little more Painter's world is like. They're going to go to this big city or whatever and look around. Alrighty, so some doors have been opened, and we need to travel through those doors next week as we go further into the pages of Yumi and the Nightmare Painter.
Yes, hopefully Painter will begin to heal. Continued growth from Yumi, and then hopefully they find a way to stay together instead of having to go back. Oh, actually, one other thing I wanted to mention, because did we talk about this last week where we talked about, because Yumi's thinking about the spaceship again, and she's thinking about how things going back to normal, and she's like, if things go back to normal and she's back to her body, like, she'll have a little more freedom, but she'll still be like super alone.
We might have mentioned it, but if you want to.
Anyway, just mentioning it passively here. Loose prediction, I hope that Yumi and Painter find a way to at least be able to regularly communicate.
Yeah. My hope right now is I imagine something like that's got to happen. But what I'm hoping now is just with Painter, Yumi seems to be a little more supportive, even though she learns this really big secret about him. But I'm hoping that will reinvigorate him, and he'll be able to do better in life, be happier in life, and maybe she can help him somehow become friends with everyone again. I don't know. Maybe he actually will become a dream watcher, whatever.
Maybe he'll defeat the Stable Nightmare, and that'll be enough to qualify him for the Dream Watch.
Yes, that'd be cool. Well, we hope you enjoyed this special episode out here in the Uinta Mountains. We thought it was fun.
Yes, it was.
Spent the weekend reading and making podcasts.
Yes.
Next week, go back into our normal studio thing, room in my apartment. We hope you see you all next week. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.
It's over.